And so we're in the middle of a series that we started a little while ago, and I'm talking about Proverbs, and the book of Proverbs, and wisdom, and what that's like to have wisdom. We talked about the importance of wisdom a few weeks ago. But I want to start by asking you a quick question. How many of you know and have some relationship with another human being on this planet? Just raise your hand. Okay, it's not a trick question, so I think everybody's hand probably would go up there, right? I'm not trying to fool you with that one. So, if that is the case, now that we've established something important, that means that at some point, everyone in this room has to communicate with somebody else in some form or another, in some way or another. And we do that using words. Now, I know this is groundbreaking stuff right now. Like, you're like, oh, you're blowing my mind. No, here's the important thing to think about with our words, is simply this: if you're like me, you probably haven't taken time in a while to sit down and actually think about the amazing gift and tool that words are to us, and the power that they actually have when we use them well and we don't use them well. So in fact, I actually want to show you a video clip real quick about an example of how not to use your words, especially if you're married. So, you want to play that for me?
Hey honey, have you gained some weight in your rear end? The dress you wear reminds me of my old girlfriend. And where'd you get those shoes? I think they're pretty lame. Would you stop talking, cause I'm trying to watch the game? If you're a man who wants to live a long and happy life, these are the things you don't say to your wife. I planned a hunting trip next week on your birthday. I didn't ask you, but I knew it'd be okay. Go make some dinner while I watch this fishing show. I taped it over our old wedding video. If you're a man who done that, a long and happy life, lives up to
So, that is a great example of where it's not, and I don't care if it's followers there or not. You do some of those things, there's no coming back from that. Right? Like that's important, because words are powerful, and we use them to communicate in every way possible, in every relationship we're in. It doesn't matter if it's your spouse, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your friends, your coworkers, your family, online. It doesn't matter. We use them for everything. Books, music, all the things. Think of the power that they have. You don't have to look too far to see how when we use our words wrong, they can come back and have major devastating effects, right? Just Google all the celebrities and all the people that have gotten in big trouble for not thinking through what they Twitter. Or you don't have to follow our president for too long to understand that he just can say anything on Twitter, and it causes all kinds of problems across the country because everyone wants to fight about it. Maybe you saw in the news that Roseanne had her TV show canceled because of a foolish tweet she sent, and all of a sudden they just had all this backfire on her, and all these things happen. It happens all the time, all around us, right? Our words are powerful, and how we use them is something we should spend some time thinking about. Because every single one of us interacts with people every single day, like I said. And so every day, you and I are choosing how we use our words. We're choosing what we say, maybe hundreds, maybe even thousands of times, depending on how much you talk. Thousands of times a day, we're choosing what we say and how we say it to the people that are around us. And we know that these words that we're sharing with our teammates, with our friends, with all these things, they can be devastating or they can be life-giving. That's a choice you and I have to make. And that's what we're going to talk about today, the impact of using wise words, because Proverbs talks a lot about that. So we started this book study a couple weeks ago, and Proverbs is a book in the Old Testament of the Bible, and it was written by a guy named King Solomon, who is the wisest guy, not a wise guy, but the wisest guy to ever live. Right? God gave him, asked him what he wanted. He asked him for anything. He asked for wisdom. So this guy, he had access to the wisdom of God, and we see how he wrote and wanted to give the wisdom and share. And in that book, he shares so much about how we speak. So if the wisest guy that ever lived writes about how we use our words, we should probably pay attention to why that's so important. See, we're gonna look at that, and we're gonna say, listen, when we're in relationship, that's kind of one of the most important currencies we have today. I don't know if you realize that or not, but relationship is what really kind of drives culture now. Like you can have all the money in the world and no relationships, and you really haven't accomplished much. But your relationships are what really kind of each other. So if they're so important in our culture, we should probably look at how do we protect them? How do we do our best to make sure that they're the strongest they can be? How do we make sure that the words we use for the people we're spending the most time communicating with are ones that are going to be life-giving and not death-causing? In fact, Proverbs 18:12 reminds us of this simple fact. The tongue has the power of life and death. And now maybe you've experienced that a little bit in your life. You could probably recall a time when someone said something really encouraging to you, and it's been like a breath of fresh air. It's been life-giving to your soul almost. But it's probably easier, if you're honest, if I say, think about the worst thing someone said to you. The harshest thing that's ever been said to you that's really kind of crushed you. So you can probably think of that almost even quicker, right? Because that stays with us longer. We've all experienced that. That old playground saying of sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will not hurt me. Yeah, it doesn't really hold up as you get older, does it? It's almost like I would rather get hit in the face with a rock than deal with the pain that these words have caused me. Because at least the physical side of it can heal. But man, some of those words, they create wounds that go so much deeper and it takes so much longer to get over and to deal with. In fact, Proverbs also goes on to say that our words just don't even, they're not just powerful, they can actually burn each other. Proverbs goes on to say in 16:27, the scoundrel plots evil and his speech is like a scorching fire. Now that word there, scorching fire, literally means like a coal that you would use to start a fire. Our words can burn, and how we use them can actually physically burn people. And we get that because, listen, that's kind of a cultural thing we do now, right? If you've been around, someone says something sarcastic and mean, and no one's like, oh, burn. Like, you ever do that? My kids do that all the time. They're like, oh, you're at the table, you know, and they say something funny or say something sort of mean, sort of sarcastic, like, oh, you got burned. Like, it happens. You know what I'm talking, you hear me around kids. Like, that's something we do. We almost make a game out of it in our culture now. We're like, oh, who can burn each other the best? Who's the wittiest? Who's the most, can be the meanest, the quickest? You got burned. We get that. But the fact is that when we've been on the other end of that, we know what it's like to get burned, and we know how painful it can be. We've all experienced just how explosive, unwise, and foolish words can actually be in our relationships. And it doesn't take much, does it, to start that fire? It doesn't take much. Usually it's a small spark, and boom, things can get way out of control really quickly in our relationships. I remember learning this very early on in my marriage to my amazing wife, Rachel. The best things I ever did was marrying her. But when we got married, we had some communication things we had to work through, I can tell you. And one of those things, let me tell you, we fought about things that absolutely did not matter. They were the dumbest things. And they will tell you, even in your relationships, fight, the couples that fight, usually the number one thing they fight over is nothing. It's usually nothing, right? It's the dumbest little things. And one of the things that we had some of the biggest fights over in our house when we first got married was food. Okay, food. And I'll tell you what the specific food was. Ice cream. Ice cream in our house. Because here's how this works. We like Ben & Jerry's. Anybody like Ben & Jerry's? Fans of Ben & Jerry's? So we would get the pints of Ben & Jerry's. And she would get her flavor, and I would get my flavor. And we would sit down. But this is how we looked at those things. For Rachel, a pint of Ben & Jerry's is one serving. For me, I can make it last a little bit, right? So she's like, oh, this is great. This is one helping of Ben & Jerry's, my pint. I'm like, whoa, this is Chubby Hubby, which is my favorite. This is Chubby Hubby. I'm going to savor this. I could eat a quarter of it and enjoy it and then put it back in the freezer for later so that I could come back to when I really wanted it. Now, that's not how she works. And so there was a moment where we did this. We had the Ben & Jerry's in the house, and she ate all of hers, and I did my thing for savor and put it in the freezer, and then I went to work the next day. And on the way home from work, I'm thinking, man, I could really go for the rest of my Chubby Hut. This would be good. I'm like driving, I'm like tasting it. I'm like, this is gonna be something. I'm like looking forward to I get there. I get home. Hi, honey, how you doing? I go in the freezer, open it up. No Ben & Jerry's. It's gone. And now I was like, what just happened? What happened to my ice cream? She's like, what do you mean your ice cream? Like, it was in the house. I'm like, yeah, but that was my ice cream, right? See, we were raised differently. She was raised that if the food's in the house, it's anybody's. You can have whatever you want as long as it's around. I wasn't raised that way. I was like, that was my ice cream. You don't touch my ice cream. Ever seen that Friends episode with Ross and his sandwich? I was like, this is my ice cream, right? Like, what happened? I was looking forward to this ice cream. And she's like, what do you mean you're looking forward? Don't touch a baby. I'm like, whoa, this is fine. It's not everyone's head. So we started going at it. And then, you know, as words do, they get out of control. And it started becoming less about the ice cream and started to get personal. I'm like, don't you have any self-control? Oh, dude, it just went to a different level after that. You know what I'm talking about. It's like, yeah, they stopped me buying the ice cream. I'm going to be in big trouble in a minute. So, and it went from there. That's what happens, right? Words get out of control very, very quickly if we're not careful. And it doesn't take much. It only takes a small spark, sometimes over the dumbest things, for us to lose control of the words that we use, especially with the people that we care about the most. And so we have to look at that and go, okay, if we're gonna approach relationships with wisdom, if we're gonna actually seek after wisdom, if we're not gonna be foolish people. Remember we talked about 2 weeks ago the paths we get to choose, wisdom or foolishness. If we're gonna be wisdom, if we're gonna be people who choose the wise path, we gotta start with what we say. Right? And so there's been a lot of research done on relationships and what causes problems within relationships. And not just marriages, but any relationship that you're in. Friendships, dating relationships, co-workers, family. Been done a lot of research on this. And what the researchers have come down to, after they've kind of studied all these different connections people have, is they've been able to identify on a pretty regular basis 3 major red flags in any relationship that can determine whether that relationship is going to make it or not. 3 major areas that they can say almost with 100% certainty that if these areas are not addressed well or taken care of, that relationship is probably not going to make it. So I want to look at those 3 areas, and then I want to look through Proverbs and see how it helps us address those areas and keep them from taking control of our lives and causing fires in our relationships that we don't want to have. Right? So we're going to look at those. The first one of those things, I think we're all very familiar with, criticism. Has anybody ever been criticized? It's not fun. Right? Criticism is one of those things that can just quickly derail any relationship you have. And it's not that you can't, it's usually it starts off innocent enough maybe, like it's more just like a small complaint, kind of like, hey, you said that you were going to do the dishes and they didn't get done. What happened with that? But then it escalates into more like, well, you never do the dishes when you say you're going to do the dishes, right? You're not reliable. You're not like it gets into criticism. Criticism is like complaints on fire because basically what it does is it takes the issue and it makes it personal about the person, and it always goes there if you let it, right? And you get to use those phrases with never and always, and those things that just tear people apart. And we've all been around that. And sometimes we've been around people who like to criticize and they think it's fun almost, like they just don't even realize they're doing it because it's such a part of who they are. But criticism is one of the #1 things that will start to tear relationships apart. Doesn't matter if it's a coworker and you're like, you tear them apart because they didn't finish the project on time, or you're pulling all the weight in the team. What's the matter with you? Why are you so lazy? Right? We make it personal. Criticism is like kind of the acid we pour on relationships. That's one of the #1 things that they say is the start of a crack in the foundation of any relationship, is when it starts to get critical. But the other thing that they found, besides being critical, is contempt. Now when I say contempt, what that means is communicating to people with disgust. Right? We've seen Inside Out, Pixar movie, a while ago. Like, if you've seen that and watched that movie, disgust, that's a good picture of what contempt looks like. Kind of that, like, just sneered look, kind of the eye roll, you never, man, like, I asked you to get the chips for the party, you didn't get it, no surprise, you didn't do that, right? Really what this is sarcasm. This is what we see all the time, right? Sarcasm is one of those things that can really destroy a relationship. I mean, have you ever gotten this from a boss or a coworker? Where instead of confronting you with a specific issue, they kind of talk in a sarcastic tone and way about you. It was a passive-aggressive attempt to like make you feel bad, but instead of helping you, it's more cutting and cruel. Like that's sarcasm. In fact, it kind of reminds me of this Proverbs that it talks about. It says this. It says in Proverbs 26:18-19, it says, like a madman shooting firebrands or deadly arrows is a man who deceives his neighbor and says, "Oh, I was only joking." How often do you and I use that phrase where we can say something quasi-mean and then go, "Oh, just joking. I was just joking." Right? I mean, with me on that, I do that all the time. We're like, "Yeah, I said that," and it makes you feel good to kind of get that jab in, but then you just, "Oh, I was just joking." Like, that makes it better. Right? Like, I can get away with that because I was just joking. Right? Sarcasm, for many of us, and I know we live in New Jersey, so let's just say this is kind of like a second language. for a lot of us, right? I mean, this is kind of like, hey, listen, I don't even speak English anymore. It's all sarcasm. So you have to discern what I'm saying to you. Right? Sarcasm literally means, if you go to the root of those words, it literally means the tearing of the flesh. And that's what we do when we kind of do those jabs back and forth each other. It start probably innocently enough, but almost always end up going someplace too far. And it kind of becomes a one-upmanship. If you've ever been with people who are really sarcastic, it goes back to that burning thing where you're like, hey, you say something sarcastic, it's funny. Oh, yeah, I'm going to say this and be a little back to you, and then kind of go do this thing, trying to beat somebody, and next thing you know, you said something actually really mean and hurtful. And it's like, oh, I was just joking, just being sarcastic, you get it, right? Let me tell you something, sarcasm is not a love language. So let's just start with there in your relationships. No one has the love language of sarcasm. And it's not a spiritual gift, okay? A person who says, I have the spiritual gift of sarcasm. That's not a thing, okay? That's just trying to spiritualize the fact that you just like to be mean to people, and you're good at it. Maybe you're witty and you can find those things, but is it really worth it? Is it really worth it? Sometimes we don't even pay attention to how sarcastic we are with each other, and sarcasm just throws fuel on the fire that's already there. Because we know words can tear people apart. We've probably seen that in our families. I mean, I know there's so many families that people just aren't even talking to each other, haven't talked to each other for years because of something somebody said a long time ago that hurt them. Maybe it was something sarcastic at a holiday or something, whatever, and it's just driven them apart. Divides families. Or maybe you've been at family gatherings where you know that the fire, like there's embers, and you're just sitting there praying to make it through the day before someone throws fuel on that fire because, man, doesn't take much, right? And sarcasm usually is one of those things, man, it adds gasoline to that fire real quick. Because it's a way of expressing in a way that's not loving, but it kind of gets the anger out, it gets the tension out. You can do it in a way like, oh, I was just joking, I was just kidding, come on, lighten up, you know, don't be so sensitive. They point to that's one of the biggest things after criticism is that idea of contempt, that just kind of disgusted, kind of the, sarcastic response to people. But the third thing that they found that really destroys relationships is this idea of defensiveness. Right? Defensiveness. Defensiveness is one of those things that it becomes the problem isn't me, it's you. Right? You get defensive. Someone says, hey, you didn't do this. You're like, wait a second. Your boss will say, hey, you didn't turn that report in. Well, yeah, but you didn't give it to me in time to do it. Well, yeah, but I told you about it. Well, yeah, but I didn't know the process. So it's your fault that I didn't get it done. Right? Defensiveness becomes blame shifting. And any relationship that will erode any kind of communication. We start to pass the blame to somebody else. Defensiveness becomes something where we just go, listen, I don't want to deal with this anymore. It's your fault. Right? Maybe if you have kids and they go over on their cell phone plan and they're like, hey, listen, why are we 1,000 texts over our limit? Well, if you'd gotten the unlimited plan, then I wouldn't have to worry about it. Right? It just comes back at you. Like we know how that goes. In our family, so we have a dog, puppy, and so I see this all the time in our family about who's going to walk the thing. Okay, whose turn is it? Well, I did it 2 days ago, so it's your turn to do it. No, I did it a few minutes, and then meanwhile the dog's going to the bathroom in the house. I'm like, come on! Like, take the dog out. No, it's not my fault. He wouldn't have gone if you would have walked him out, right? It's that defensive, blame-shifting kind of attitude that we have, and we can see it across all of our relationships. And the other thing that defensiveness does is we put up walls. It's almost a really good construction people. And we can build walls like that when it comes to somebody who's bothering us, right? This is where we just disconnect and disengage and just walk away from the conflict, walk away from the person, walk away from the relationship. It's that stonewalling kind of mentality that we do. And now, the researchers have found, guys, I'm going to talk to the guys in the room right now, 85% of the time it's the men who do this. We just kind of go, listen, I don't want to deal with this anymore, I'm done. Just put up that wall, and then you may not physically walk away. You might actually physically walk away, but you mentally just escape. And you just like, I'm going to deal with this. You're bothering me. I just don't have time to talk about it. And you know what happens more often than not nowadays? You know what I see people doing? You know, I know they're disengaging. They're like this. Someone's talking to them, like, yeah. This text is so important right now. I got to check this. Hold on. Right, like you use your phone as an escape to just disengage from what's going on around you. That will dissolve relationships so quickly because you put those walls up and you're just done. You're just done. You don't want to process, you don't want to deal with it, you just shut down, and there can be no resolution from that. And here's the thing, this is where we get these stereotypes that aren't fair, but we say them all the time, right? Where you have the man who leaves us emotionless and he doesn't care, and the woman who's nagging him, and we have these battles all the time. But you know what? Neither one of those is fair, because neither one of us, when you put up those walls, it might seem like you're emotionless, but you're not. You care, you just don't want to deal with it in the moment, so you just put up those defenses, and you're like, I'm done with the problem. And then the woman gets the nag thing, but she's not a nag, she's just trying to get you engaged. Trying to get you to show that you care about the relationship enough to fight for it, to communicate for it. So we have all these things that come out of this when we get defensive, when we choose poor words. We don't have wisdom in how we interact with each other. Anybody seeing themselves in any of these? Just be honest, like I am. I'm all these. I'm going to be honest here and tell you, I struggle with all this stuff. Always, right? Like we're in this picture, whether at work or at home, or if you play on a team, or you do whatever. These are dynamics we have to pay attention to. What do you do with your words? So Proverbs goes on to help us with these things. And I just want to remind you one thing as we get into Proverbs and look at solutions to these major red flags. Here's a phrase I want you to remember. Wise words win. It's as simple as that. Wise words win. Now, it's not a competition of like, well, I can say better words than you. I'm saying what they do is they win hearts, right? They win against the destructive, painful, foolish words that are so easy to throw out there. Because all of us know how to do the foolish work really well. It's not hard. We're kind of born with that ability, a lot of us. It's called sin. We're really good at just trashing people and throwing out, just making a mess where we go with our words. But when we choose wise words, that's where we see life. That's where we see relationships restored. That's where we see hope again. We have to choose those things. And when we do, they win. They win over the devastation that those foolish words can cause. They win over the plan of the enemy to try to break relationships apart. They win. God says, let me give you a tool that's going to help you have the kind of relationship I want you to have. To win the kind of relationships that are available to you. Use wise words. So wise words win. And Proverbs is going to show us 3 ways to counteract those other 3 red flags really quickly. The first one when it comes to criticism is simply this. Curb your criticism. Right? Like, it's not a gift, it's not a right to be critical. Like, you can use your words, yes, we have free speech in this country, but it's not something you can just wield as a weapon to go after and say, well, listen, I'm going to control you with my criticism because I can make you feel this or that. In fact, Proverbs speaks specifically to that. In Proverbs 12:18, it says, reckless words pierce like a sword, but the tongue of the wise brings healing. Our words can be like a weapon. Be like a sword, like a knife we can use to cut people up, and some of us are really good at it. Sometimes when we kind of take pride in how good we are at it, and we can cut up our coworkers, we can cut up our spouse, we can cut up our children with our words, and we can cause all kinds of pain in the process. But wise words bring healing. They build up. They help people understand God's love for them. They take a second and go, you know, I could cut you up with my tongue. I could cut you up with the words I could throw at you right now, but I'm going to take a second. And instead, I'm going to try to bring healing to this relationship. But how do you do that? What does it look like when someone's in your face and coming after you, and you can easily just get them back, right? What does it do? Well, Proverbs talks about that too. He says in Proverbs 15:1, it says, a gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. You ever been in one of those situations? Where someone is at your face, coming at you, coming after you, at work, or wherever you are, as a family member, maybe at a family gathering, and you have a choice in that moment whether you're going to power up and go right back at them, or take a second, think, and give a gentle answer. Turn away from the fight. And there's a lot of chances we have to do that, right? It's not always easy, though. Because a harsh word is just going to make things worse. And we know that. We've been in those situations. You probably think of all times you said the wrong thing back, and it's just gotten worse and worse. But when you take that second to have a gentle reply, take a second to calm down, and think before you respond to those situations, it can change everything. I remember a time in high school that I was on the baseball team in high school. It was my sophomore year, and we always stopped at McDonald's after our baseball games. We're always stopping on the way home, and there was this one time this McDonald's we stopped to have a play place. Again, we were high school students, but we were high school students. And so we were there, and after we ate, everyone, there was a couple guys who thought it'd be fun to run through the play place before we got back on the bus. Of course. Well, so the coach was like, all right, guys, let's go. Everyone's head out to the bus. These guys get out, and they run to the play place. They go as fast as they can down the slide with the ball pit, and they're back on the bus. Well, they didn't realize there were some little kids in the ball pit. And he came flying on the slide and kind of landed near them, not on them, but close enough to freak them out. And so the mom not happy about that choice. So she went up to our coach and she let him have it. I mean, like, it was like in his face, let him have it about the kid, his control over them, what's going on, these are stupid kids, they could hurt my kid, it was like the spit flying, nostrils flaring kind of conversation, right? And I could tell, my coach, I'm watching from the window, my coach is taking it from this lady, because he's like, all right, I'm not getting back, and he's just trying to compose himself, and she finally calmed down and left, and he got on the bus. Oh boy, like, it was not a fun time to be on that bus. Now, what happened was, I wasn't a part of those guys that ran through the play place, but they thought I was, because I was with that group as they were walking out. So when the mom was pointing out the kids who were there, she pointed out me too. And so when we got back to the school, the coach reamed me. I mean, he was in my face, reaming me out for what he thought I did. And I mean, I just kind of stood there and I was like, okay, let me get this big guy. I'm like, all right. And finally, I was just like, Coach, I'm really sorry. Like, I was starting to get angry, because he was blaming me for something I didn't do. Like, and so there was a righteous anger in that sense in a little bit, right? You've been accused of something you didn't do. I was starting to feel that, and I just realized, you know what? Nothing good is going to come if I go back to my coach right now. It's just not. So I was just like, Coach, I'm really sorry that happened. I really am. I honestly had nothing to do with it, but if you want me to, take the discipline like everybody else, I'll do that, because I know that puts you in a really bad spot. Now, that was all God, because at that point in my life, I was not smart enough to come up with that on my own. But in that moment, like, and he finally calmed down to the point where later he said, you know what, he's like, I don't know if you were there or not, I'm not taking the mom's word for it, so you are gonna have to, go through some of the consequences of that, but he's like, I really appreciate your honesty and sharing that. And he had calmed down and come back to me and actually even apologized for it. A gentle word can do that when someone's in your face yelling at you. But when we power up, we get critical and come back at them, just creates more and more tension. So watch your criticism, curb your criticism, set it aside and go, listen, I don't have to be the most powerful one in this argument. I can think before I respond. But then after that, what that allows you to do, when you learn to not be critical, it allows you to then kill your contempt and not each other. See, that's the thing. So when we're with that contempt, that sarcastic response, when you approach people with that sneer, that eye roll, or just that hand in the face disgust that we can have towards other people, it creates all kinds of problems. But when we kill that contempt, it allows relationships to thrive. Proverbs 15:18 says, a hot-tempered man stirs up dissension, but a patient man calms a quarrel. Learning to be patient with people, learning to stop and think before you say something, instead of just letting every emotion in your head fly because, you know what, I'm sarcastic, deal with it. I can use my words like a knife. I'm so good at it, just take it, because that's who I am. Being a patient man, you can calm those conflicts. You can share, and you can be someone who actually brings peace into those situations, instead of someone that adds more fuel to the fire. And each time we're faced with a conflict in our relationship, we have a choice of what we're going to do with it. We really do. But we got to watch our language. We got to watch the phrases we use. Here's a phrase never to use in those situations. What's wrong with you? Have you ever said that? I've said it, unfortunately, way too many times to my kids. I apologize every time I do afterwards, because I've realized that's not helpful in any situation. What's wrong with you? That doesn't do anything for anybody in the conflict. Right? It's not patient, just passing the blame. It's making it the problem about them, not about what the actual situation is. Again, because all these things tend to get personal instead of actually focus on what the truth is. Something else never to do. Never say never. Right? That phrase is a death blow to most relationships. You never do this. You always do that. You never do what I ask you to do. You never are on time. You always take their side. You always do this. Right? All it does is universalize the problem. The fact is it's never true. It's not 100% all the time. They don't always do or never do it. All it does, again, is you attack the person's character versus the actual problem. Right? You have to look at the phrases you use. There's another thing when you're dealing with contempt and putting that away and killing that in your relationships. Don't get historical. I didn't say hysterical. Don't do that either. Don't get historical. Stop bringing up the past. Look at this. Proverbs tells us, it says in 17:9, he who covers over an offense promotes love, but whoever repeats the matter separates close friends. You know what that means? Is that when something happens, deal with it. Covering up does not mean you don't deal with it. That's not what it's saying at all. So don't take that to be like, oh, we have this buried family secret that no one talks about, or we just don't talk about that sin that happened or that painful situation. No, you deal with it. You ask for forgiveness. You go through the steps you need to go through, but then what you don't do is you don't mark it down on the scorecard so that when you get in a fight later, it becomes ammo. Don't ever use the past as ammo for the future. Right? Saying, deal with it, ask God's presence into it, deal with the pain, deal with the hurt, but don't bring it up the next time you get in a fight. Don't get historical with each other. It's so easy to do. It's so easy to do. Yeah, well, in our house, dishes are one of the things I usually do, but it's very easy to be like, hey, would you do the dishes tonight after dinner? I just did that Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and you didn't do it and you just easily go, yeah, you're just keeping score of all the things that you didn't do and bringing it up again instead of saying, you're right. Yes, I can help you out by doing that. We can do it in our families so easily. Remember that mistake you made a long time ago? Yeah, well, I forgive you, but I still haven't gotten over it, so I'm going to keep beating you over the head with it every time you do something I don't like. Right? All those things do is divide. Here's the deal. Jesus doesn't do that with us, and aren't you glad? He doesn't hold our past against us. He doesn't hold our past mistakes against us. He says, listen, when you ask for forgiveness, it is as far as the east is from the west. I totally forget about it. I don't even think about what you did. He tells us in 1 Corinthians, it says, love keeps no record of wrongs. Basically, it tears up the scorecard. So here's the deal. To kill your contempt, tear up the scorecard. Stop keeping track of how many times you've forgiven them and how many more you're going to do it before they're totally done. Right? Think about tearing up your scorecard and what that means. Because when you get to that place, when you're able to not hold the past against people, you're able to tear up that scorecard, you're able to kill that contempt, that allows you to tear down your defensiveness, to stop being so defensive. That seems simple, stop being defensive, but it's not as easy as it sounds, right? Proverbs 18:13 says, he who answers before listening, that is his folly and his shame. He who answers before listening, that is his folly and his shame. See, listening is key to any solid relationship. Using wise words. You gotta learn to listen. And most of us, when you're defensive, you don't care what the person's saying. Alright? Anybody get to that point, someone comes at you and your first reaction is, I'm not even hearing you, I'm just powering up what I'm gonna say that's gonna come back at you. You're not even listening to what they're coming at you with. You get defensive automatically and just want to tell them exactly what you're thinking. Like it says, to answer before listening, it's foolishness. It's foolishness. So drop your defenses. Be willing to let someone come to you and actually listen to what they're saying in relationship. Listening is a key relationship skill. And most of the time, relationships blow up and don't happen because people don't learn how to listen. You're not willing to hear the truth sometimes. Because Proverbs 15:31 says, he who listens to a life-giving rebuke will be at home among the wise. If you're willing to listen to someone come and give you what the key words are, life-giving rebuke, speaking into, hey, listen, I love you, but this is really important that you know this is happening, and I don't think this is healthy for you. Or they come to you and say, listen, like, our relationship's important enough that I'm going to tell you that right now, like, you hurt me. Or that thing you said, or that thing you did, like, I didn't like that. It actually hurt my feelings. Could you work on your attitude towards me with this? Could you work on how you speak to me? Like, those kind of life-giving rebukes, because it helps the person get better. It helps them learn to communicate better. This is not a license to go in and just tell everybody everything you hate about them. It's not what it's talking about. It's not a chance to just blow somebody up with all of your problems or things you don't like about them. It's a chance to come and say, listen, I really care about you. Here's something that can make our relationship stronger. And being willing to listen to that, you know what the reward is? That's right there. Well, wisdom. The thing we're all looking for. Stronger relationships. That's the reward we get when we're willing to drop our defenses and listen to what people actually are trying to say. Listening is a skill, and it takes humility. It takes humility to say, listen, I get it. I don't always need to be right here. I don't always need to be the first person to get the last word in. I'm willing to listen to what you have to say to me, but it strengthens relationships. And wisdom is a result of that. It also means you gotta tear down those walls. Stop just walking away. Stop just disengaging completely and jumping on your phone and ignoring the person. I get it. What you have to recognize in relationships is some people take longer to process than others. Again, We've learned a lot in our marriage. Rachel and I handle conflict and communication very differently. When something comes up, she wants to deal with it right on the spot. I'm more of a processor, and I need to have a chance to think through what happened and what I want to do. Anybody a processor? You know, you're talking about, you're one of those internal people. Anybody else like that kind of like, we're having this out right now and we're not leaving until it's done, right? Okay, so in relationship, those two things will cause conflict because people want to deal with things very differently. So you have to recognize who you're talking to, number one, but your defenses have to go down to be able to see that. To tear down those walls and say, listen, you know what? If you're one of the processors like me, here's what you do when someone is one of those people who wants to have it out right there. So listen, I value a relationship, but I need you to know that I need a space to think about it right now. I'm not disengaging from this. I'm going to think about this, pray about it, whatever I need to do. I'm going to work through this problem, but I need space to do that without you in my face. I need space to be able to do that, to understand it, and to process my own emotion. It's okay to communicate that. And if you are someone who needs to have it out right then and there, remember to listen to what that person's saying to you. To say, all right, I don't have to decide this right now. We can talk about this today. We can talk about this tomorrow. Or let's set a time to finish having this conversation. That's expressing love in those relationships. Drop your defenses. Learn to listen. That's what Proverbs teaches us. What save those and combats those three destroying red flags in your relationship. But here's the thing. As we wrap up and the worship team comes back up and closes this out, none of us can do this on our own. None of us. Right? We all need wisdom that's beyond ourselves. And the Bible tells us that wisdom, it comes from Jesus. It comes from the Holy Spirit. In fact, the Bible refers to Jesus as the wisdom of God. Right? And he says, if you don't have it, ask for it. And he will help you understand it. Because wise words win. And we all want to have healthy, strong relationships that are impacting and are bringing life, not death. They're not destructive, but help people have understanding, connect better. But on our own, very often, we don't do it right. We need help in making those decisions. The Bible says, ask. Jesus wants us to see. It's Father's Day. We have a really good Heavenly Father. And he wants healthy relationships for us. He wants us to be in those kind of relationships that are healthy, that win, that have heart connections that are strong, that build up, that offer life. He wants us to have that. So here's the challenge to you for this next week. I want you to pick one of those areas and one relationship that you're in. Not all of them. Don't go home and be like, I'm going to change all of this in my life. Listen, that never works. It doesn't happen. Go after one thing, one of these areas. Criticalness. Maybe you're really just critical. Maybe it's defensiveness. Maybe it's disgust or sarcasm. Go after, think of one of those areas if it's a problem for you, and think about one relationship that you tend to use that with more than anybody else. Maybe it's your boss. Maybe it's a coworker. Maybe it's your kids. Maybe it's a family member. Maybe whatever. Think of that person. And think of that one area, and then I want you to do this. I want you to ask God to give you wisdom. But when you interact with that person, you choose wise words over foolish ones. Give you the strength to pause before you just blurt something out. Give you a chance to curb your spiritual gift of sarcasm, right? Like, give you a chance to use the right words at the right time to build life. Think of one relationship, and think of one of those three areas we talked about. This week, God can help you change using wise words. Because wise words win. And wouldn't it be amazing to be a part of a world, a part of a community, a part of a family that chose wise words over foolish ones, that chose life over death, with how we speak to each other? What will your world look like if that's the kind of relationships and communication style you guys have and the people have with you? It would be very different. It would be very different. So let's be those people who started. Let's be those people who take the chance and ask God to be people who use wise words. God, I thank you for today. I thank you for your word. I thank you for the truth. Thank you for how much you love us. And the fact that on our own, we're not wise enough to do these things, God, but you come to us and you say, just ask for it. I will give it to you because I want you to have healthy relationships. I want you to be in connection where you were designed to be in connection, because life and not death. Not constantly dealing with wounds from past harsh words that you said or someone has said to you, God. So right now, people are dealing with just not being able to forgive harsh things that were said to them by somebody else. Foolish words that came their way. God, I pray for healing. Pray for release of peace into those wounds, those places, those words that are cut so deep. God, I just pray for your healing to go there. God, I pray for all of us that we would look at your word and would be people who use wisdom when we speak to others. Maybe people that offer wise words that bring healing and life. life, that you give us the courage to listen when people come in and say, hey, you might want to think about changing how you talk this way. People that can speak truth in our lives, I pray you bring those for everybody. And we would listen when they do, and our relationship would flourish because of it. Because you're in the middle of it, because we're listening to you and asking you to help. So Holy Spirit, do what only you can do. Bring healing, bring truth, bring wisdom.